Part 1, The Discovery in the Frozen Depths. A mission below. Lieutenant Nolan Reed pressed his face against the reinforced viewport of the deep-sea submersible, squinting into the pitch-black waters of Thalassa 4. Outside, floodlights cut through the darkness, illuminating strange bioluminescent creatures that darted away from the vessel's approach. The pressure at this depth would have crushed a normal submarine, but the Nautilus was designed for extreme environments. Approaching thermal vent field, sir, reported Ensign Juniper Wells, her fingers dancing across the navigation console. Temperatures rising rapidly. Good work, Nolan replied, checking his own readings. That's exactly what we're looking for. Director Okafor will be pleased. The 7-person expedition had been deployed from the research vessel Horizon 3 weeks ago to map the ocean floor of this newly discovered exoplanet. What they'd found had exceeded all expectations, an underwater ecosystem teeming with life forms never before documented. Nolan's comm unit crackled. Lieutenant Reed, this is Director Okafor. Status report? We're approaching the thermal vent system now, Director, Nolan replied. Initial readings show unprecedented geothermal activity. These vents are putting out 3 times the energy of anything we've seen on Earth. Excellent, the director's voice was crisp with excitement. Collect samples, but exercise caution. We still don't understand the full scope of the ecosystem down there. The Nautilus descended further, navigating between towering black chimneys that belched superheated water and minerals into the ocean. The temperature outside the hull climbed steadily, but the vessel's cooling systems maintained a comfortable environment inside. Look at that, gasped Lieutenant Imani Parker, the team's biologist, pointing toward what appeared to be a field of crystalline structures growing around one of the larger vents. Those formations shouldn't be possible in these conditions. The shimmering anomaly. Nolan ordered the submersible closer. The crystals were unlike anything in their geological database, iridescent, semi-transparent structures that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Are they organic? Nolan asked, fascinated. Imani shook her head, baffled. I can't tell from here. We'll need samples. Preparing external collection arm, Juniper announced, already manipulating the controls. The robotic appendage extended from the submersible, carefully approaching one of the smaller crystal formations. What happened next defied explanation. The moment the collection arm made contact with the crystal, a pulse of energy radiated outward, briefly disrupting the submersible systems. The lights flickered, and the vessel shuddered. What was that? Nolan demanded, checking the control panel as emergency lights kicked in. Some kind of electromagnetic discharge, replied Chief Engineer Toshiro Hirano, his fingers flying over the diagnostic screen. Systems rebooting now. As power returned to normal, Nolan looked through the viewport again. The crystal field had changed, the formations had retracted into protective stances, like sea anemones sensing danger. All except one. A single crystal, about the size of a football, had detached from its base and was drifting toward them. Is that thing moving on its own? Juniper whispered, her voice tight with disbelief. The forbidden choice. It's coming straight for us, Toshiro observed, already working to reactivate the submersible's defensive systems. Before anyone could react, the crystal made contact with the hull, not with force, but with a gentle precision that seemed deliberate. A strange resonance vibrated through the vessel. No detectable damage, Toshiro reported after a quick scan. But wait, this can't be right. He frowned at his readings. It's emitting a complex pattern of vibrations. Almost like communication, Imani finished breathlessly. It's trying to communicate. The crystal pulsed, its inner light brightening and dimming in rhythmic patterns. To Nolan's astonishment, he felt a strange pressure in his mind, not painful, but insistent, like someone knocking on a door. Are the rest of you feeling that? He asked, pressing his fingers to his temples. The confused expressions of his crew answered his question. Director Okafor's voice crackled over the comm. Lieutenant Reed, sensors up here are going haywire. What's happening down there? Nolan hesitated before responding. Protocol demanded full disclosure, but something held him back, an inexplicable intuition that what was happening should remain between those present. Minor system fluctuation from the thermal vents, he lied, catching the surprised looks from his crew. Nothing to worry about. We're continuing sample collection. After signing off, Nolan faced his team. I can't explain why, but I think we need to bring that crystal aboard. Sir, that violates at least 3 containment protocols, Toshiro objected. We have no idea what that thing is. It's not hostile, Nolan insisted, though he couldn't explain how he knew this. Trust me. After heated debate, they used the collection arm to bring the crystal into the specimen chamber, a sealed compartment designed for potentially hazardous samples. The first connection. Once secured inside the transparent chamber, the crystal's pulsing light intensified. Nolan approached cautiously, placing his hand against the barrier separating them. The pressure in his mind returned, stronger now, and with it came fragmented images, vast underwater cities, beings of light moving through crystal spires, and a sensation of desperate urgency. It's dying, Nolan whispered, suddenly certain. Without the thermal energy, it can't sustain itself. Lieutenant, we should jettison it, Imani advised, concern evident in her voice. Whatever it is, it's affecting you somehow. But Nolan couldn't bring himself to abandon the crystal. Against his better judgment, he overrode the chamber's safety protocols and opened the inner door. Sir, don't. Juniper cried out, but it was too late. Nolan reached in and lifted the crystal. It was surprisingly light, warm to the touch. The moment his skin made contact, the pressure in his mind dissolved into perfect clarity. He wasn't just holding a crystal, he was holding an egg. And inside was a sentient being, the last of its kind, reaching out across the void of understanding in a desperate plea for survival. We need to place it near a heat source, Nolan ordered, his voice steady despite the impossible knowledge now filling his mind. It needs thermal energy to complete its developmental cycle. His crew stared at him in stunned silence, but something in his expression broke through their hesitation. Toshiro reluctantly configured a containment unit with elevated temperature controls, and Nolan gently placed the crystal egg inside. As the heat surrounded it, the egg's pulsing light stabilized, and Nolan felt something new in his mind, gratitude, and a presence that had not been there before. A bond forming across species, across worlds. What he didn't know then, as the Nautilus began its ascent to the surface, was that he had just made a decision that would alter the fate of 2 civilizations. The creature growing inside that crystalline shell was not merely rare, it was sacred, the custodian of ancient powers, and its disappearance would soon bring the wrath of an empire from beyond the stars down upon them all. Part 2, A Bond Beyond Worlds. The Hatching. 3 days after the Nautilus returned to the research vessel Horizon, Nolan Reed sat alone in his quarters, staring at the crystalline egg nestled in its specialized containment unit. The egg had grown noticeably larger, its surface now rippling with complex patterns of light that shifted and danced like liquid electricity. Sleep had become elusive for Nolan. Whenever he closed his eyes, his mind filled with alien visions, vast underwater cities, beings composed of light and crystal, and an overwhelming sense of ancient knowledge just beyond his grasp. He hadn't reported any of this to Director Okafor or Central Command. Something told him that bureaucracy and protocol would be the death of the extraordinary life form entrusted to him. A soft chime from his door interrupted his thoughts. Enter, he called, discreetly covering the containment unit with a thermal blanket. Dr. Imani Parker stepped inside, her expression tense. Lieutenant, we need to talk about what happened down there. The crystal, the effects it's having on you. I'm fine, Doctor, Nolan interjected, perhaps too quickly. Imani's eyes narrowed. You haven't been to medical for your post-mission check. You're isolating yourself. And the crew is talking about how you've been smuggling extra power packs to your quarters. She paused, her voice softening. I'm concerned, not just as the expedition's biologist, but as your friend. Before Nolan could respond, a high-pitched frequency emanated from beneath the thermal blanket, followed by a cracking sound. Both of them froze. It's happening, Nolan whispered, pulling away the blanket. The egg's surface was fracturing, light pouring through the growing fissures. Imani gasped, instinctively stepping back, but Nolan moved closer, drawn by an impulse he couldn't explain. We should call Director Okafor, Imani said, reaching for the comm panel. No. Nolan's hand caught her wrist. Not yet. Please, Imani. 5 minutes. Something in his eyes must have convinced her, because she nodded reluctantly. 5 minutes. A new life form. The crystalline shell continued to fracture until, with a final pulse of light, it shattered completely. In its place, floating in the containment fluid, was a creature unlike anything human eyes had ever seen. It was about the size of a small cat, with a serpentine body that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. Its skin gleamed with the same iridescent quality as the egg, translucent enough to reveal a complex network of luminescent veins pulsing beneath. 6 delicate tendrils extended from its head, waving gently in the fluid as if tasting the environment. Instead of eyes, it had what appeared to be sensory organs that glowed with an intense azure light. Incredible, breathed Imani, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her caution. It's not like any known class of organism. The biological structure is, it shouldn't be possible. The creature turned in the fluid, those glowing sensors focusing directly on Nolan. The pressure in his mind returned, but different now, clearer, more directed. Protector. The word formed in Nolan's mind with perfect clarity, not heard but understood at a level beyond language. Did you? He began, looking at Imani, who shook her head in confusion. Did I what? Nolan realized she hadn't heard it. The communication was directed solely at him. The creature pressed against the transparent barrier of its containment, those tendrils splaying against the surface. Without thinking, Nolan placed his hand on the other side. Immediately, a surge of images and sensations flooded his consciousness, but organized now, intentional. He saw the creature's species, ancient guardians of the deep thermal vents, protectors of the balance between the planet's core and its oceans. He felt its isolation, the last of its kind after some cataclysm that had wiped out its civilization. And most overwhelmingly, he felt its imprinting, on him. A bond, irrevocable and profound. Rapid growth. Nolan? Imani's voice seemed distant. Nolan, are you all right? He blinked, coming back to himself. It's communicating with me. Telepathically, I think. He looked at the creature with wonder. It's called a luminar. The last of its kind. You got all that from touching the glass? Imani's scientific skepticism was evident. Before he could explain further, the creature began to change. Its body elongated, the tendrils growing more defined. Within minutes, it had noticeably increased in size. That's not normal, Imani said, alarmed. No organism grows that quickly without massive energy consumption. As if in response, the lights in Nolan's quarters dimmed, power being drawn to the containment unit. The luminar continued to grow, its form becoming more defined, those serpentine features taking on a more draconic appearance, with elegant fins extending along its spine. It's drawing energy from our power systems, Nolan realized, remembering the thermal vents where they'd found the egg. It feeds directly on energy. Over the next hour, they watched in amazement as the creature tripled in size, soon outgrowing its containment unit. Nolan was forced to transfer it to his personal shower stall, filling it with salt water to mimic its native environment. This is beyond anything we're equipped to handle, Imani said, watching the now dog-sized creature swim gracefully in its makeshift tank. Nolan, we have to report this. The hidden truth. The creature, which Nolan had begun to call Lumina, turned its attention to them, those glowing sensory organs pulsing. Again, Nolan felt the pressure in his mind. Danger. Discovery brings hunters. What hunters? Nolan asked aloud. Imani looked at him in confusion, but before she could speak, Lumina projected a new series of images into Nolan's mind, beings similar to humans but with skin that shimmered with a pearlescent quality, wielding weapons of crystalline technology, harvesting creatures like Lumina for some terrible purpose. There's an advanced civilization, Nolan explained to Imani, his voice hushed with the weight of this revelation. They hunt Lumina's kind. They use them somehow, as weapons or energy sources, I'm not sure. This is exactly why we need to inform Director Okafor, Imani insisted. If there's an advanced alien civilization out there, especially one that might be hostile, Earth Central needs to know. Nolan shook his head. You don't understand. If we report this, they'll take Lumina. Study it. Dissect it, maybe. And based on what I'm feeling from our connection, that would be a betrayal of the worst kind. Imani's expression softened with sympathy. You've bonded with it, haven't you? That's why you're acting this way. It's more than that, Nolan tried to explain. Lumina's species are guardians. They maintain planetary balance. They're intelligent, maybe more intelligent than we are, just in a way we can't comprehend. A sudden alert blared throughout the ship, cutting their conversation short. Attention all personnel, Director Okafor's voice announced over the intercom. We have detected an approaching vessel of unknown origin. All department heads report to command immediately. This is not a drill. Nolan and Imani exchanged alarmed looks. In the shower stall, Lumina's body pulsed with intensified light, its tendrils writhing with agitation. They come. The hunters come. It's them, Nolan whispered. The civilization that hunts Lumina's kind. Somehow they've tracked us. That's not possible, Imani protested, but her voice lacked conviction. We're light years from any known civilization. Nolan approached the makeshift tank, placing his hand against the transparent wall. Lumina pressed against it from the other side, its luminescent veins pulsing in sync with Nolan's heartbeat. In that moment of connection, knowledge transferred, ancient, profound, terrifying. The Aquarian Empire, Nolan said, the alien name strange on his tongue. They've been monitoring this planet for centuries. Lumina's kind are sacred to them, bound to their royal bloodline. And we've just committed the equivalent of stealing their holy grail. The ship's lights flickered as Lumina grew again, its form now distinctly reptilian, with a crest of luminescent fins adorning its elongated head. It was beautiful, alien, and radiating power that Nolan could feel resonating with something deep inside himself. What do we do? Imani asked, looking between Nolan and the rapidly growing creature. Nolan straightened, decision made. We protect Lumina. And hope we can explain ourselves before the Aquarian Empire decides we're thieves worthy of execution. As if in response to his resolve, Lumina's glow intensified, bathing the room in otherworldly light. The bond between them strengthened, and Nolan knew with absolute certainty that his fate was now inextricably linked with this extraordinary being from the depths of an alien ocean. Part 3, The Royal Ultimatum. First Contact. The command center of the research vessel Horizon hummed with tense activity as holographic displays tracked the approach of the unknown vessel. It had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, emerging from what sensors identified as a localized space-time distortion, technology far beyond humanity's capabilities. It's nearly twice our size, Director Okafor observed, her usual composure strained. And those energy readings. Nothing in our database matches their signature. Colonel Winston Fletcher, head of security, stood with arms crossed, his weathered face grim. Whatever they're using for propulsion, it's not conventional. No exhaust, no radiation signature we can identify. Are they responding to our hails? Asked Captain Elias Durand, the Horizon's commander. Communications Officer Lin shook her head. Nothing on standard frequencies, sir. But there's something else. She adjusted her headset. A signal, directed specifically at us. Not radio, not any transmission protocol I've ever seen. The main view screen flickered, then resolved into an image that caused every person in the command center to fall silent. The being on the screen appeared almost human, but with striking differences. Her skin gleamed with an opalescent sheen that shifted colors with her movements. Delicate gill-like structures adorned her neck, and her eyes were large, pupilless orbs of luminescent violet. Most startlingly, her head was crowned not with hair, but with what appeared to be living tendrils that moved gracefully, adorned with jewels and intricate metalwork. I am Princess Lysithea of the Aquarian Sovereignty, she announced, her voice melodic yet commanding, translated somehow despite the alien physiology of her speech organs. You harbor a sacred Leviathan offspring, stolen from our protected sanctuary. Return it immediately, or face the consequences of your transgression. Director Okafor stepped forward. I am Director Nadia Okafor of the Earth Science Vessel Horizon. We mean no offense to your people, but I'm afraid I don't understand your accusation. We are a peaceful research expedition. The princess's expression hardened, those violet eyes narrowing. Do not compound your crime with deception. Our sensors detect the Leviathan's energy signature aboard your vessel. You have 20 of your Earth hours to prepare it for transfer, or we will be forced to retrieve it ourselves. The transmission ended abruptly. Director Okafor turned to her senior staff. Would someone please explain to me what a Leviathan is and how it came aboard my ship without my knowledge? In that moment, Lieutenant Nolan Reed entered the command center, Dr. Imani Parker close behind him. The director's gaze locked onto them immediately. Lieutenant Reed, she said, her voice dangerously calm. You were chief officer on the deep submersible mission. Is there something you neglected to include in your report? Revelation and decision. 1 hour and a very heated debriefing later, Nolan stood before a hastily assembled council of the ship's senior officers, explaining his actions while acutely aware of the judgment in their eyes. The crystal, the egg, was dying, he concluded. I made a judgment call to preserve a sentient life form. A judgment call that may have started an interstellar incident, Colonel Fletcher retorted. These Aquarians clearly possess technology far beyond ours. If they decide to take offensive action. They won't, Nolan interrupted. At least, not if I can speak with Princess Lysithea directly. Director Okafor raised an eyebrow. And why would the alien princess grant an audience to the very person who, in her view, stole their sacred creature? Because of my connection with Lumina, Nolan explained. The Leviathan, as they call it. We've bonded on a level I can't fully explain. Lumina has shared knowledge about the Aquarian culture with me, knowledge that might help us navigate this situation. Lieutenant Reed claims he can communicate telepathically with the creature, Dr. Parker added. Her tone was professional, but Nolan could hear the lingering skepticism. Director Okafor studied Nolan carefully. And this creature, Lumina, has grown to what size now? About the dimensions of a dolphin, Nolan admitted. And still growing. We've had to move it to the auxiliary water tank in Cargo Bay 3. The director pinched the bridge of her nose, clearly struggling with the absurdity of the situation. Let me understand this correctly. In the span of 3 days, you've smuggled an alien egg aboard my ship, hatched it into a rapidly growing sea monster with telepathic abilities, and attracted the attention of an advanced alien civilization who worship said sea monster. She sighed deeply. And now you want me to arrange a diplomatic meeting with their princess? That's an accurate summary, yes, Nolan acknowledged. To his surprise, Director Okafor laughed, a short, incredulous sound. Well, Lieutenant Reed, it seems you've single-handedly advanced first contact by about a century. God help us all. She straightened, decision made. Very well. We'll request an audience with Princess Lysithea. But I want to see this Leviathan for myself first. The Princess and the Leviathan. The auxiliary water tank in Cargo Bay 3 had not been designed as a permanent habitat, but the engineering team had worked miracles in the last 12 hours, installing filtration systems and thermal regulators to approximate the conditions of Thalassa IV's deep oceans. Within this makeshift environment, Lumina swam with fluid grace, its body now nearly 4 meters long. Its form had continued to evolve, taking on aspects of both serpent and dragon, a sinuous body with articulated limbs ending in webbed claws, a majestic crest of bioluminescent tendrils flowing from its head and down its spine, and those haunting blue sensory organs that seemed to peer not just at, but through any observer. Director Okafor stared in unconcealed wonder. "It's magnificent," she breathed, approaching the transparent barrier. "And you say it's still juvenile?" "According to what Lumina has shared with me, adult leviathans can grow to over 30 meters, Nolan explained. "They're the apex predators and ecological engineers of Thalassa's oceans." Lumina swam closer to the barrier, those sensory tendrils extending toward Nolan. The now familiar pressure of its consciousness touched his mind. "The Royal One comes. She will claim me by ancient right." "What do you mean, ancient right?" Nolan asked aloud. "My kind and hers are bound. For 1,000 generations, we have served as guardians to their sovereignty. It is the pact." "But you bonded with me," Nolan argued, aware of the strange looks from his colleagues. "Unprecedented. Forbidden. Yet true." There was something like wonder in the alien thought patterns. Two bonds now exist where there should be only one. A choice must be made. Before Nolan could press further, the ship's intercom activated. "Director Okafor, Princess Lysithia's shuttle has docked in Bay 1, Captain Durand announced. Her delegation requests immediate escort to the Leviathan." Minutes later, the cargo bay doors slid open to admit the Aquarian delegation. Princess Lysithia led the procession, even more striking in person than she had appeared on the viewscreen. She wore what appeared to be living armor, plates of iridescent material that shifted and adjusted with her movements, possibly some form of biotechnology. Behind her followed 6 guards, tall and imposing, carrying crystalline staffs that hummed with barely contained energy. The princess stopped abruptly upon seeing Lumina, her violet eyes widening with what might have been reverence. "The Leviathan has progressed to adolescence," she observed, her melodic voice carrying easily across the cargo bay. "Far more rapidly than natural development should allow." Her gaze shifted to Nolan. "You are the one responsible for removing it from the sacred grounds." It wasn't a question, but Nolan answered anyway. "I found a dying egg and sought to save it. I didn't know its significance to your people." "Ignorance does not absolve theft," Lysithia replied coldly, but then her expression changed to one of confusion as Lumina swam to the barrier nearest Nolan, pressing against it as if trying to reach him. "What is happening? Why does it respond to you?" Part 4, Betrayal in the Deep. Uneasy Alliance. "Lord Admiral Thalax is my father's most trusted military advisor," Princess Lysithia explained, pacing the conference room of the horizon. "If he's moved against me, against us, then the situation is far more complex than I initially believed." 4 hours had passed since the confrontation in the cargo bay. The rogue Aquarian sentinel had been confined to the brig, while emergency teams worked to contain the flooding. Lumina had been relocated to the ship's exterior, attached to the hull like some magnificent living figurehead, communicating with Nolan through their telepathic bond despite the physical separation. "Your father, the Emperor," Director Okafor clarified, "is he aware of Lord Admiral Thalax's actions?" Lysithia's tendrils writhed with agitation, their bioluminescent tips flashing in patterns that seemed to reflect her emotional state. "I cannot say with certainty. My father has been unwell. Thalax has increasingly spoken with the Emperor's voice in matters of state." Colonel Fletcher leaned forward, his tactical mind engaged. "So this could be a power play. If the Leviathans truly legitimize your royal rule, then controlling one, or eliminating evidence that the bond can extend beyond your bloodline, would be strategically valuable. You understand quickly for an outsider, Lysithea acknowledged with a nod that sent ripples of light cascading through her tendrils. The Leviathan bond has been the exclusive right of the imperial bloodline for millennia. It is how we prove our divine mandate to rule. Nolan, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Lumina has been showing me images of an ancient time when the bond was more widespread. Not just royalty, but many Aquarians could form connections with the Leviathans. That changed after some kind of conflict. Lysithea's large, violet eyes fixed on him with intensity. Such history is forbidden knowledge, spoken of only in the most secure imperial archives. How could the juvenile Leviathan know this? Genetic memory, Dr. Parker suggested. Many Earth species carry instinctual knowledge passed down through generations. If Lumina's species is as advanced as it appears, their genetic memory could be extensive. The princess fell silent, clearly troubled by the implications. Finally, she straightened, her royal bearing reasserting itself. We face a common threat in Lord Admiral the Lax. I propose a temporary alliance. Your vessel will accompany mine to the imperial capital. Together, we will present this situation to my father before the Lax can further manipulate events. Director Okafor exchanged glances with Captain Durand. You're asking us to travel to your homeworld? That's a significant diplomatic step. It is necessary, Lysithea insisted. The Leviathan has formed a dual bond, with me and with Lieutenant Reed. This is unprecedented and must be addressed by the highest authority. And if this Lord Admiral attacks us en route? Colonel Fletcher asked bluntly. Princess Lysithea's expression hardened. My royal cruiser is more than capable of defending itself, and your vessel. After extensive deliberation, Director Okafor agreed to the alliance. The Horizon would follow Princess Lysithea's ship through a controlled spacetime fold, the Aquarian method of faster-than-light travel, to her homeworld, Oceanus Prime. As the meeting disbanded, Lysithea approached Nolan privately. The human with the impossible bond, she said, her voice lower, almost intimate. Walk with me to see our shared connection. Depths of deception. On the exterior observation deck, they stood before a massive viewport that revealed Lumina swimming alongside the ship, now nearly 10 meters long and still growing. The creature's body undulated with hypnotic grace, its bioluminescent patterns shifting in complex rhythms. Beautiful, isn't it? Nolan said, watching Lumina's majestic form. Magnificent, Lysithea agreed. Among my people, bonding with a Leviathan is the most sacred experience possible. It is said that in the joining of minds, one touches eternity. Nolan turned to study her. Up close, the alienness of her features was balanced by expressions that seemed remarkably human. Her tendrils moved more subtly now, glowing with gentle pulses that seemed almost like a form of non-verbal communication. Can you hear Lumina's thoughts? He asked. Like I can? Not as you describe, she admitted. Our connection is more formal. Ritualistic. The full bond emerges only after the completion of sacred ceremonies. She hesitated, then added, for an untrained outsider to achieve such a deep connection is unsettling. I didn't choose this, Nolan said quietly. It just happened. Precisely what makes it so significant, Lysithea replied. The ancient texts speak of bonds formed by destiny rather than design. Such bonds were once considered the purest expression of the connection between our peoples. Our peoples? Nolan echoed, confused. A slight smile curved Lysithea's lips. Did you think your species and mine evolved independently to such similar forms? There is much history you do not know. Before she could elaborate, an alert sounded throughout the ship. Captain Durand's voice came over the intercom, all senior staff to command immediately. We've detected multiple approaching vessels. In the command center, tactical displays showed 3 Aquarian warships emerging from spacetime folds near Thalassa 4. Imperial sentinels, Lysithea identified them, her expression grave. Thalax's personal fleet. They're hailing us, Communications Officer Lin reported. The main screen activated to show a severe-looking Aquarian male, his skin darker than Lysithea's, with tendrils that were shorter and more rigid, adorned with military insignia rather than royal jewelry. Princess Lysithea, he began, his tone formal but undercut with menace, by order of Emperor Neridon, you are to return to Oceanus Prime immediately. The human vessel is to surrender the Leviathan and submit to imperial inspection. Lord Admiral Thalax, Lysithea responded, her posture straightening regally. I was not aware that my father had dispatched you personally for what should be a routine matter. The contamination of a sacred Leviathan bonding is hardly routine, Thalax replied coldly. Particularly when the princess herself appears to be collaborating with the transgressors. I am investigating an unprecedented situation, as is my right as keeper of the sacred bond, Lysithea countered. These humans acted in ignorance, not malice. Thalax's expression remained unmoved. Nevertheless, the Leviathan must be secured, and any knowledge of the forbidden bond contained. His eyes shifted to Nolan. Is this the human who has corrupted the sacred connection? Watch your accusations, Admiral, Lysithea warned. You forget yourself. And you forget your duty, Princess, Thalax snapped back. Your father's condition worsens. The Empire needs stability, not complications from rogue Leviathans and alien interlopers. Nolan felt a chill at the calculation in Thalax's eyes. This wasn't just political maneuvering, there was something personal in the Admiral's antagonism. We will escort you home, Thalax continued, his tone softening to something equally dangerous. For your protection, of course. The truth beneath. After the transmission ended, Lysithea turned to the Horizon's command staff, her composure visibly shaken. We must depart immediately. My royal cruiser can open a fold large enough for both vessels, but we must reach minimum safe distance from the planet first. And what about Lumina? Nolan asked. The Leviathan must come with us, Lysithea insisted. It is too dangerous to leave it here, and its connection to both of us makes separation problematic. As preparations for departure began, Nolan retreated to his quarters, seeking a moment of clarity. The political complexities of the Aquarian Empire were beyond his experience, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being manipulated into something dangerous. Deception swims in deep currents, Lumina's thought touched his mind, stronger now than ever before. Thalax? Nolan asked aloud. And others. Old secrets. Buried truths. The princess knows more than she reveals. That gave Nolan pause. You don't trust Lysithea? Trust is not binary. She believes what she has been taught. But what she has been taught is not complete. A knock at his door interrupted their communion. Dr. Parker entered, her expression troubled. I've been analyzing the biological data from our rogue Aquarian prisoner, she said without preamble. Nolan, their DNA structure has elements that are shockingly similar to human genetics. The statistical probability of such similarities evolving independently is virtually zero. Lysithea hinted at some connection between our species, Nolan replied. It's more than a connection, Imani insisted. Based on these markers, I'd say we share common ancestors. But that would mean that either humans are descended from Aquarians, or both our species were engineered by something else, Nolan finished for her. The truth flows closer to the surface, Lumina's thought whispered in his mind. The ship lurched suddenly, emergency alerts blaring. They rushed to the command center to find chaos, tactical displays showing weapons fire exchanged between Lysithea's royal cruiser and two of Thalax's vessels. What happened? Nolan demanded. Thalax ordered us to hand you over specifically, Director Okafor explained tersely. Princess Lysithea refused. And then this. Part 5, The Final Choice. Ancient Truths Revealed. The grand archives of the celestial palace stretched endlessly before them, illuminated by floating orbs of bioluminescent light. Cashin followed Princess Nyara through towering shelves of crystalline tablets, each one containing millennia of celestial history and knowledge. Lumina, now the size of a small dragon with wingspan that could cast shadows over entire rooms, padded silently behind them, her scales shifting between deep azure and violet with each movement. "The scrolls of origin should be here," Nyara whispered, her opalescent skin catching the light as she reached for an ancient container on the highest shelf. "Texts that haven't been viewed in over 1,000 cycles." Sage Varanth, the elderly keeper of knowledge who had risked everything to grant them access, glanced nervously toward the entrance. "We must hurry. Lord Dravik's guards patrol these halls every quarter cycle." Cashin helped Nyara retrieve the heavy container. When they opened it, a holographic display of ancient script illuminated the space between them. Lumina growled softly, her golden eyes fixed on the glowing text. "This is the original covenant," explained Varanth, his gnarled fingers tracing the air above the symbols. "Before the royal bloodline claimed exclusive rights to the Guardians." Nyara's expression hardened as she translated. "The Guardians choose their companions based on spiritual resonance, not by blood or birthright." Her voice caught. "Everything I was taught was a lie." "Not a lie, Your Highness," Varanth corrected gently. "A manipulation that began 7 generations ago when your ancestor, Queen Zephyrine, feared losing control of the Guardians. She altered the bonding ritual, adding components that artificially restricted the Guardians' choices to royal bloodlines only." Cashin studied the original text. "But Lumina chose me, a human with no connection to your world. That's what makes your bond so significant." Varantha's eyes gleamed with excitement. "The artificial constraints are weakening. When Lumina's egg chamber was destroyed in the asteroid field, she awakened without any ritual influences. She chose purely." A distant alarm began to sound, echoing through the vast archive chambers. "Lord Dravik must have discovered our absence," Nyara said, quickly replacing the scrolls. "We need to move." "There's more," Varanth insisted, pulling another crystal tablet from his robes. "The prophecy of renewal speaks of an outsider who would bond with a guardian of pure lineage, breaking the false traditions. This outsider would restore balance between guardians and people, ending the monarchy's exclusive claim. That's why Dravik wants me dead," Cashin realized. "I'm not just an anomaly, I'm a threat to the entire power structure." "And why my father seems so conflicted," Nyara added. "He's a good ruler who suspects the truth but fears the change it would bring." A tremendous crash echoed from the entrance of the archives. Lumina's head snapped up, her body tensing for combat. "They're here," Varanth whispered, terror in his eyes. The confrontation. Lord Dravik strode into the central chamber of the archives, flanked by a dozen elite guards and his own corrupted guardian, a massive beast with scales the color of dried blood. Unlike the luminous, intelligent eyes of Lumina, this creature's gaze was clouded and vacant, controlled rather than bonded. "Treason!" Dravik's voice boomed through the vast space. "The princess conspires with an alien interloper against the crown, while a traitor to the scholarly order assists them." Lumina positioned herself between the approaching forces and Cashin, her wings extending to their full impressive span, scales pulsing with intense light. "There is no treason in seeking truth, Dravik." Nyara stepped forward, her royal bearing on full display despite her simple attire. "We've found the original texts. The exclusive royal bond with guardians was fabricated." "Ancient history is malleable, Princess," Dravik sneered. "What matters is power now. Your father lies incapacitated, poisoned by my hand. The succession falls to me as his brother's son, once you and this human are eliminated as threats." He gestured to his guardian. "Destroy them all." The corrupted guardian lunged forward, but Lumina met it with equal force. The two massive creatures collided in a thunderous crash that shook the archive's foundation. Crystal tablets shattered around them as they fought, claws and teeth flashing in the dim light. Cassian felt Lumina's determination flow through their bond, but also sensed her restraint. The corrupted guardian was not fighting of its own will. "She doesn't want to kill it," Cassian shouted to Nyara over the chaos. "These guardians aren't meant to fight each other." Understanding dawned on Nyara's face. The binding ritual, it's not just restricting who they bond with, it's controlling them against their nature. As Dravik's guards closed in, Cassian noticed Varanth slipping away toward a hidden panel in the wall. The old sage caught his eye and nodded significantly before disappearing. "We need to break the corrupted bond," Nyara said, drawing a ceremonial dagger from her boot. The control crystal would be embedded at the base of its skull. Cassian felt rather than heard Lumina's agreement through their connection. With practiced coordination born from their deepening bond, he moved in tandem with his guardian, creating an opening for Nyara to approach the struggling creature from behind. In one fluid motion, the princess leapt onto the corrupted guardian's back and plunged her dagger precisely into a small protrusion at the base of its skull. A crystal shard the size of a human thumb popped free, glowing with sickly green energy. The effect was immediate. The corrupted guardian froze, then collapsed to the ground, its eyes clearing slowly. Dravik screamed in rage and drew his weapon, firing directly at Nyara. Cassian dove, pushing her clear of the shot, feeling the burning trail of the energy beam across his shoulder. The choice. Suddenly, the walls of the archive illuminated with ancient script, glowing texts appearing on every surface. Varanth had activated the archive's emergency protocol, the truth revelation system that could broadcast to the entire celestial kingdom. "No!" Dravik howled, but it was too late. Throughout the palace, throughout the city, the unaltered ancient texts were being displayed, revealing the truth about the guardians and the artificial restrictions placed upon them. The freed guardian rose slowly, turning its now clear gaze toward Dravik. The lord backed away, terror replacing his previous confidence. "The bond," he stammered. "You can't break the bond." "We didn't break it," Cassian said, helping Nyara to her feet. "We freed it. There's a difference." All around them, the guards lowered their weapons, uncertainty clear on their faces as the revelation spread throughout the palace. The great doors to the archive burst open once more. Emperor Thaurus entered, supported by his personal physicians but very much alive. "Father." Nyara rushed to him. "I survived my nephew's poison," the emperor stated flatly, his gaze fixed on Dravik. "Barely. And I returned to find treason, but not from where I expected." Dravik fell to his knees. "Your Majesty, these outsiders seek to destroy our traditions, our very way of life." "Our traditions were built on lies," Thaurus replied, gesturing to the glowing texts surrounding them. "I suspected as much for years but lacked the courage to seek the truth." He turned to Cassian and Lumina. "Until an outsider showed us what a true bond could be." The freed guardian approached Dravik slowly. The lord cringed away, but instead of attacking, the creature simply sniffed him once, then turned its back and walked toward Lumina, touching foreheads with her in what appeared to be a gesture of gratitude. "What happens now?" Cassian asked, feeling the weight of the moment. An entire civilization's foundation was shifting. Emperor Thaurus looked to his daughter. "That choice falls to the next ruler. My illness progresses, accelerated by the poison. Nyara will become empress within the cycle." Princess Nyara stepped forward, her bearing regal yet transformed by recent events. She looked from her father to Cassian, then to the guardians standing side by side. "The age of exclusive royal bonds must end," she declared. "Guardians will choose their companions freely, as they were always meant to do. Our society will find new balance, not based on controlled power, but on true partnership." Her eyes met Cassian's. "And we will forge new alliances with worlds beyond our own, beginning with Earth. The human who restored our truth will be our first ambassador." Cassian felt Lumina's approval through their bond, along with something else, a sense of rightness, of destiny fulfilled. Whatever lay ahead for the celestial kingdom and for Earth, this moment marked a turning point for both civilizations. As dawn broke over the crystalline spires of the capital city, citizens gathered in the great plaza below the palace. There, Princess Nyara, soon to be Empress, stood with a human beside her and two magnificent guardians at their backs, ready to guide her people into a new era of truth, freedom, and cosmic harmony. The end.